what about the Jerome Messam situation? I don't want to get into all the legalities
Yeah.
of it, but
Yeah.
we look at it from a roster perspective. That whole tailback troika was pretty mystifying for a lot of the season. Does this impact the team? They weren't really leaning on him from a ratio perspective that much. It seems. What impact is the Messam thing going to have?
I would think, yesterday would have created some waves in the locker room just because it's such an alarming issue that came up, and then all of a sudden he's released. So their on-field product, I don't think will be adjusted too much. Jerome's a pretty good back, but they, like you said, every third series, it seemed like he was going to go in the game. So they can adjust that easily, and they already have, I'm sure. But the dynamics amongst your team, yeah, it would cause, he's a veteran guy that has been around and knows some guys, obviously, from his background there and whatnot. But I don't think the impact will be too significant. I don't believe.
As a GM, how do you? I mean, you had to handle situations, not exactly the same, obviously, but in 2013 there were legal situations that came up.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do in the front office when you have to just deal with, irrespective of the specifics of the situation? What does that do internally? When you had three of them to deal with that year.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to deal with as a GM because you obviously want to do the right thing for the community and the law and all that stuff. But you have to be very, very careful. I mean, there was some pressure back in that year to get rid of those guys or at least suspend them for a game or two just based on the charges, which I flat out disagreed with. Because the more I got some facts brought to me, I wasn't necessarily convinced that what was going on was true. So the thing that I was trying to guard against was our locker room, because they know what went on in that incident or two. And if you start to throw guys under the bus, what are you telling your guys in that locker room? You're with them or you're not. And by throwing them under the bus, I would have, in my opinion, been telling the guys in the locker room, I'm not with you in this. I'm just going to react and knee jerk. And, well, if it's right, it's right. And if it's wrong, too bad. But that whole scenario, engulfed my time, and Corey and Jeremy basically ran the team during those, few days. But it's a very slippery slope because there's public pressure and there's, people that assume what the facts are when in reality they weren't. That's always dangerous. So I've never been a guy that would take a guy and say, okay, you're guilty. Oh, you're innocent? Oh, shoot. I'm always, let's get the facts. Let's wrongfully or rightfully take the side that they're innocent until we know more. But some of those guys that were involved that year were a pretty important part to our success. Yeah. And they had a reputation that didn't quite line up with what happened that night. I'll just put it that way.
And what happens?
And as it proved out in the courts, the charges were dropped.
And that's, in cases, the only one of them has actually made it to court, didn't it? And that was just, okay, goodbye. The judge pretty much threw it out immediately. So what if you had bowed to public pressure? What if you taken what may have been perceived at the time as the easy way out and just said, okay, goodbye? Well, irrespective of what impact it would have had on the football team, you would have cut three players who were ultimately and quite resoundingly exonerated. And what kind of message does that send?
And that's what I mean. I mean, the guys in that locker room knew what was going on that night. And if I just did that, they're going to look at you as a GM running your football team going, what is this guy all about? He's not with us. He's against us. And you have to be to a degree as a GM and as a head coach at times. But I always believe in trying to do the right thing with the facts that you can gather. And the facts that we gathered took 4 or 5 days to get. But to base your decision on 24 hours of facts, I probably would have suspended them. But there was way more going on behind the scenes. But it puts you in a difficult spot, and I think you're seeing that in pro sports quite a bit, not in just the CFL. But it's tricky.
When it comes to the Jerome Messam, there's a zero tolerance level for the CFL for this kind of thing with Johnny Manziel and Justin Cox and Euclid Cummings and all these guys. So
where's Duron Carter fit into that?
Mm-hmm.
Where's Duron Carter fit into that?
Sorry. Well, I don't know. Where does dumb fit into legality?
Well, obviously he doesn't, because they viewed it that it's not as serious as charge as these other ones, right?
Yeah. And it isn't. I don't think it is. I don't think. But
yeah, but he's guilty too. What happens if these kids aren't guilty?
I know that's the question we're going to say. Like my wife asked us, what happens if he's not guilty? What happens if this is thrown out of court?
And he's not the only one in the league lately that's done this.